In today's video, I am going to show you how I make these vanilla pumpkin spice latte socks. Or at least that's what I'm calling them. They're crocheted using very basic stitches. And this project is much easier than you might at first glance think. Thank you for visiting Weaving Weird Studio, and my name is Sig, and this is where you and I create a little magic with every knot. It's your interest and your support that allows me to contribute new content and weekly videos. Help us all grow together by tapping the subscribe bar, notification bell, and like buttons. I look forward to your comments and always value your feedback. Now let's get started. So let's talk yarn. For today's project, I'm using Peyton's Kroy socks from Yarnspiration. This particular yarn is a blend. So we're basically looking at 25% nylon and 75% wool. The nylon gives this wool a couple of different qualities that are appreciated. For example, you still have your wool if you're someone who likes to wear natural fibers, but you have a little extra give that's given to you from the nylon. So you get a little more of a stretch going on. And then also it allows you to wash this a little more easily. So for example, this particular yarn, I will be able to wash on the gentle cycle and dry on the gentle cycle. So I don't have to get too crazy or too particular about how I care for my socks. This color is muslin. It's basically a nice kind of creamy or natural color yarn. And then this color right here is called Copper Colors. So it has this wonderful blend of fall colors that definitely remind me of pumpkin spice. It's a super fine yarn, a one weight. So this will help you. So in the event that this particular yarn doesn't work for you or you have trouble finding it, and really, at least in the US, you shouldn't have too much trouble finding it because it's a pretty common yarn that you're going to find in any of your big box store, craft store kinds of places like your Joann's and your Michaels. I'm not really familiar with Hobby Lobby or some of the dollar store kind of varieties of yarn that you might find at those places. But here we have a Michaels and we have a Joann's. And these two colors are pretty common colors, and I've seen them in the stores over the last couple of years as a regular kind of color palette that you're going to find without any trouble. Now, if for some reason you can't find these colors or this particular yarn isn't going to work for you for whatever reason, just remember that if you use a 100% wool yarn, the shape and the feel of your socks are going to be different than if you find a one weight, completely synthetic yarn, such as something that's nylon or that has spandex in it. That's going to give you a different feel and a different kind of a shape to your sock. So don't panic too much and don't get too concerned about it. As long as the socks fit your feet and they feel comfortable, then we're all already ahead of the game. Now, next, I want to use a size D hook for these socks. Also, you're going to want to have a yarn needle handy, which I clearly don't have right here. Oh, wait, hold on. Here we go. A yarn needle handy. Also, I'm going to suggest stitch markers. Now, I don't often, get too hung up on stitch markers if you've watched any of my videos, but this particular project is important enough for me to strongly suggest you use stitch markers. And I also strongly suggest you use stitch markers, 2 of them, in different colors. And as we get along with the program, it'll become more evident to you why 2 different colors of stitch marker is very important. And then, of course, also, you're going to want to have your scissors. In addition, and just as a side note, I came across these cute little novelty buttons, little pumpkins. And so, as you can see on the sock, I have placed the little button on the side of my sock just to give it a little more personality. Now, you can certainly do this if you like. You can certainly pick a different kind of novelty button, or you can choose not to use a button at all. It's just that little bit of personality that I chose to put on my sock. So if you are doing small socks, you're going to want to chain 11. Those of you who are making a size medium sock, go ahead and chain 14. And I am doing a large sock, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 17. Two, three. Next, we're going to go ahead and skip into chain from our hook, and I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch after that. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a stitch marker into that first single crochet. Next, into the second chain, I'm going to go ahead and single crochet 2 single crochets. Now, regardless of the length of chain you have, you're going to still follow these basic instructions. After that, I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in each one of my chain stitches until I reach the last 2 chains, and I'm going to stop right before those 2 stitches. So that'll be 1, 2. So once we've completed that, the next thing we want to do is place 2 single crochets into the second to the last chain on this length. And then in that very last chain, we want to place a single crochet. Now, for this single crochet, this is where we want to put our second stitch marker. Now we're going to work the opposite side of the chain, and we're going to work in the free loops. So the next free loop, or first free loop that we see actually, going to go ahead and single crochet 2 single crochets into that stitch. And then I'm going to want to single crochet in each of the free loops all the way down until just before you hit the last 2 free loops. So that'll be 1, 2. So now I have 2 free loops left on my chain. And so the second to the last free loop, I'm going to make 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And then for this very last free loop, we are actually going to skip that. So you should have something that looks like this. So basically, if you are working with the size small, you should have approximately 22 stitches. If you're doing medium, you should have approximately 28 stitches. And if you're doing large, you should have completed approximately 34 stitches. So now we're ready to move on to round 2. And for round 2, I'm simply going to place my next single crochet right into the single crochet with a stitch marker. And I'm going to move that stitch marker and replace it into the beginning of the round 2 stitch. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets. And then I'm going to do a single crochet in each of the single crochets until I get to the stitch right before the stitch that has my stitch marker. So I'm going to just single crochet in each one of my stitches. And now that I've gone as far as the open stitch before my stitch marker, that is the stitch I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put 2 single crochets in that stitch. Then I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did before when we began round 2, and I'm going to place a stitch right there into the stitch that had the stitch marker. Basically a single crochet right there. I'm going to replace my stitch marker. And then in the next stitch, I'm going to put 2 single crochets. And then just as before, I'm going to completely single crochet, a single crochet in each one of these stitches until I hit the stitch just before the stitch that has the stitch marker. And again, I'm going to place 2 single crochets in that stitch right next to the stitch marker. And that'll be the completion of round 2. Now, the reason, just before we move on to round 3, the reason why we have 2 different colored stitch markers is because once you get a little further into this project, it's going to be kind of tricky to see where you began, right? So you definitely want the stitch marker on the opposite end so that you know where to place your double single crochets. But you also want to be able to know where your rounds begin and end, thus the 2 different colors of stitch marker in order to help you do that so you don't wind up getting confused or lost, particularly if you have to put your work down and walk away. So again, we're going to begin round 3. Now for round 3, we're basically going to repeat round 2. And now this is where things are going to just get slightly tricky for a moment. So if you're making small socks, you're only going to do 1 more round, right? Your round 3 will be it before you move on to the next part of the toe. However, if you're making medium socks, you are going to want to do 4 rounds. So that means you're going to repeat round 2 more times. And then if you are making large socks like I am, you're going to want to repeat round 2 3 times, and that will give you 5 total rounds. Okay, so before we move on to the next step, if you are doing small socks, you're going to end with a total round count of 3 rounds. Medium, you're going to end with a round count of 4, and if you're doing large, you're going to end with a count of 5 rounds. And basically, you're just going to repeat round 2. So again, that's going to be a single crochet right there where the stitch marker is at. And then we're going to move the stitch marker up to the next single crochet, just like so. And then in the stitch after that, I'm going to go ahead and place 2 single crochets. And then I'm going to single crochet across the length And I'm going to stop just before the stitch that is just before the stitch that has the stitch marker in it. And then again, in the stitch before the stitch marker, you're going to place 2 single crochets in that same stitch. And then in the next stitch, you're going to go ahead and place 1 single crochet. And then move your stitch marker. And then again, in the stitch after that, you're going to place 2 single crochets. And then you're going to single crochet across this length until you hit that last stitch just before the stitch that has the stitch marker in it. And place my 2 single crochets right there into that very last stitch of round 3. Now, if I were making small socks, I would be ready to move on to the next step of the toe. If I'm making medium socks, I have 1 more round to do, just like the one I just did. And if I'm making large socks, then I have 2 more rounds to do, just like the one I just did, basically repeating round 2. All right, I'll meet you back here in just a moment to start the next step of the toe. So now once you have this section, this first section of your toe completed, if you're making a small sock, you should have 30 stitches. If you're making a medium-sized socks, you should be looking at a 40 stitch count, and with a large, you should have a 50 stitch count. Now, the next thing we want to do for the next 6 rounds of our sock, we're simply going to single crochet in each stitch all the way around. So while at this point, this stitch marker isn't very important for time, this is the stitch marker that you want to really keep in place, your first one. And that's going to signify each round that you make. So I'm going to go ahead, and you're going to go ahead and single crochet each stitch, a single crochet, and I'm going to do this for 6 rounds. So just remember, for those of you who are beginning, just make sure you move your stitch marker with each new round. So this will be my first round of the second section of the toe, my beginning part at least. All right, I'm going to get my 6 rounds done. You're going to get your 6 rounds done, and we'll meet back here in just a moment. So now that you've completed your whole toe, and so for those of you who are doing a small sock, you should have a total round of 9. For those doing a medium, you should have a total round of 10, and those doing a large, you should have a total round of 11. Now, this is also the time when we're going to change colors. And basically, to change colors, for those of you who don't know, for this particular pattern, is you're going to follow through with your single crochet in your last stitch, just as you would normally follow through with a single crochet. However, you would not take that last step, right? So what you're going to do is, instead of yarning over with the original color, we're going to yarn over with the new color. Next, I'm going to single crochet in the stitch with the marker. And that is going to denote my first stitch for my next round, the section of my sock, which is basically the foot or the body of my sock. And for that, I'm going to do my first round is going to just simply be single crochet. So I'm going to just single crochet in each stitch all the way around. And then once we've done that, I am going to explain to you what we do next and what this tape measure is going to be used for. Now that we've completed the first round of the body or foot of the sock with a single crochet, we're going to move on to the seed stitch or seed technique. It's very basic. And the way we're going to do it on the sock is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double crochet into that first stitch, right? So this will be the first stitch of round 2. I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert it into that first stitch. And then I'm going to make another double crochet into the next stitch. Next, I'm going to single crochet in the stitch after that. And then I'm going to double crochet in the stitch after that. Single crochet in the next stitch. And double crochet in the stitch after that. And I'm going to continue to do that all the way around. I'm going to alternate. So I'm going to have a single crochet in the next stitch and then a double crochet in the stitch after that. A single crochet in the next stitch and then a double crochet in the stitch after that. I'm going to continue that all the way around. So when you've finished round 2, you should end with a double crochet over that last single crochet from round 1. Now the next thing you want to do for round 3 is go ahead and make a single crochet in the first stitch of round 3. Move your stitch marker. Then you're going to make another single crochet in the next stitch. And then in the next stitch, you're going to do a double crochet. And then in the next stitch, you're going to do a single crochet. And in the next stitch after that, you're going to do a double crochet. And in the next stitch after that, you're going to do a single crochet, and so on and so forth. Basically, you're going to be alternating your single and your double crochets over the last row of single and double crochets. So basically, this double crochet I just did, I did in a single crochet stitch below it. And then when I do my single crochet stitch next, it'll be done in the double crochet stitch below that. And that's basically your seed stitch. That gives you the kind of interesting, slightly textured fabric. And so for this, when I've finished this round, now do that here in just one moment. So now the last stitch of round 3 is going to be a single crochet. And then next I'm going to continue just like this, but I'm going to repeat rounds 2 and 3 over and over again until I get the length of the foot that I want. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double crochet what was, right there into that single crochet stitch. And that will be how I began round 4, basically where I'm repeating round 2, the instructions for round 2. So now we're going to determine how long the body plus the tip of our toe needs to be before we move on to the heel, right? And so we're going to continue that required length with our second color. And the way we're going to figure this out is I'm going to go ahead and take the measuring tape, and from the tip to approximately 6.5 inches, that's going to be the length of sock I want if I have a small foot, or if I'm doing this for a small foot. If I'm doing this for a medium foot, I want to bring it out to 7.5 inches. And if I'm doing it for a large foot, then I want to go 8.5 inches with the completion of this second color. And then that's where I'm going to stop and start the heel. So now we're going to continue on just as mentioned before, repeating rounds 2 and 3 until I've hit the appropriate length of the toe and body of the sock combined. So now it's time to begin the heel. I've cut my previous color, and I'm going to switch over to my new color. Now I can go ahead and take off my stitch marker because this is where I'm going to start my new color. So it'll be easy enough for me to know that this is my starting point. I'm going to bring in my new color and I'm going to go ahead and get that worked in. And then I'm going to single crochet. Now, if I am making a small sock, I'm going to single crochet 22. If I'm making a medium sock, I'm going to single crochet 24. And if I'm making a large sock, I'm going to single crochet 26. So now because I personally am making a large sock, I'm going to single crochet 26, but yours might be a little different. I'm going to begin. 2. Now that I've gotten my single crochet stitched across the appropriate length of my sock, just I'm going to make a quick little note here. As you do this, you're going to notice that your sock seems to twist a little bit and that your heel seems to be a bit off center. Don't let this bother you and don't let it stress you out because it's just the way the fabric twists as you crochet in a spiral. As soon as you've washed and blocked this the first time, you're going to be able to stretch and place it when you block it in the appropriate, you'll be able to straighten out the fabric is basically what I'm trying to say. And you won't have that issue anymore. Everything will line up just fine at that point. So don't let it freak you out, especially if this is your first time making a sock like this. Okay, so we've just completed the first row for our heel. And the next thing I want to do is I'm going to turn my sock. And then I'm going to chain 1. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to begin by making my first single crochet in the first or the same turning stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet in each of my heel stitches after that. So now that I've come to the end of my heel, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to start my row 3 of the heel. Now this is the row where we're going to begin our decrease, but not just this minute. So what we're going to do first is going to go ahead and chain 1 and then single crochet in that same stitch. And then we're going to single crochet in each stitch except for the last one in this row. So now that we've completed every stitch except for this last stitch, we're going to simply skip that stitch. And this is where the decrease actually happens for this particular project. So then next I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn my work and I'm going to chain 1 and then I'm going to single crochet in that same stitch. And then I'm going to continue to single crochet in each stitch after that until I get to this last stitch. And just as in row 3, I'm going to skip the last stitch in this row 4. So you can see that we're making kind of a stair step kind of effect on the edge of the heel here. Okay, so I'm going to skip this last stitch and then I'm going to make a chain and I'm going to turn my work in order to begin row 5. Now I'm going to continue on this way for several more rows. So basically I'm going to repeat row 3 several times. So far we've completed up to row 4 and we're beginning to start row 5. Now if I'm making a small sock, I want to end up with a total of 12 rows. So with this being the fourth, you're looking at 8 more rows. If I'm doing a medium, I want to end up with a total of 14 rows. So basically, you would then at this point need to do 10 more rows. And then for the large sock, you want to end up with 16 rows. So basically at this point, you would then have 12 rows left to go. I'll meet you back here as soon as we've finished this first part of the heel. Okay, so once you've finished the first part of your heel, you should now have something that looks like this. You can see where the heel part of the fabric is starting to decrease in this kind of stair-steppy fashion on either side. Now to move on to the next part of the heel, and this part of the heel is referred to as turning the heel. We're going to continue where we left off. I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to chain 1. And then I'm going to single crochet in each of the stitches across the top. So now I've single crocheted completely across. So then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to drop down to the previous row where I've skipped a stitch, and I'm going to single crochet right into that skipped stitch. And then right here at the end of this row, I'm going to continue on to make a slip stitch. Then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to skip the slip stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet in each of the next single crochets. So basically now we're beginning to increase. And now that I've gotten to the end of the row, I'm going to do just like what I did before, and I'm going to drop down to this skip stitch, and I'm going to single crochet in that stitch. And then right here at the end of that stitch, I'm going to go ahead and make a slip stitch. And then I'm going to turn my work. And just like before, I'm going to skip the slip stitch, and then I'm going to insert my hook into that next single crochet. And I'm going to make my first single crochet of this new row. And I'm going to continue to do just that until I've completed my heel, until I've gone and I've reconnected both sides of my heel to give me this heel that you see here on this other sock. So I'm going to continue doing that, and I will meet you back here when we have finished with this process of turning the heel. So now that I've just completed my last single crochet and slip stitch into that last skipped stitch, I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to skip that slip stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet all the way around. Well, actually just single crochet the row. So now as I come to the end of this row, I'm going to continue to single crochet in each stitch right here on the edge, and then right here into this first single crochet of the heel that we did. And this is where I'm going to change colors and pick up with my pumpkin spice color and start working the ankle. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to single crochet right there in that same stitch that we started with this last stitch of the row. And from here, I'm going to begin with the seed stitch or technique again. So my next stitch, since I began right here with my single crochet right here over the double crochet. I am now going to place a double crochet over the single crochet below it. And then a single crochet. And then a double crochet. I'm going to continue on as normal. And I'm going to continue that all the way around until I get back here. And of course, I'm going to replace my stitch marker just so that I know that this is where I began my new round, my new ankle rounds. And for my ankle, I'm actually going to do a total of 8 rounds. So just like we did before, keep in mind that above each double crochet, you're going to single crochet. And above each single crochet, you're going to double crochet. And that'll happen for every row. So if you find that you come across an area where you end up having 2 double crochets together like we did here on the one side of the sock, you might find that that happens for you just because of the way the counting works out. Then just go ahead and put your 2 single crochets over the top of those 2 double crochets and then continue as you have before. Okay, so we're going to do 8 rounds of the ankle, and then we'll move on to the ribbing at the top of the ankle once we've completed that. So I'll meet you back here in just a couple of moments. So once I've completed my 8 rounds for the ankle, as I come up to the beginning part of my work here at the stitch marker, I'm going to finish off. So my next stitch is going to need to be a double crochet. And then the stitch after that will be a single crochet. And now as I come up to my stitch marker where my round begins, and my last stitch was a single crochet, I'm simply going to move into that stitch with a slip stitch. And then I'm going to fasten that off, finish that off. And then next we're going to move on to the ribbed ankle cuff. So for this, I'm going to come here, I'm going to go to the back of my sock, and I'm going to figure out about where the center part of that is at. It doesn't have to be, perfect, but it's easy enough to see. So if I take one end of my heel and the other end of my heel and I pinch them together and then just kind of fold this in half like so, I can say this, with relative confidence that this stitch is going to be the center stitch. Now, of course, I can count and get my exact stitch, but I'm not real concerned about it with this particular cup because the ribbing is going to hide the majority of that seam anyways. Now, how I'm going to work this is I'm going to go ahead and tie in my vanilla colored yarn. And I'm going to chain 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Next, I'm going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. And then I'm going to single crochet in the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to single crochet in the next stitch here at the ankle stitch. And then I'm going to single crochet again in the next stitch on the ankle edge. So far you should look something like this. Next, I'm going to turn my work, and then I'm going to come to the next stitch, not this stitch, but this next stitch right here, and I'm going to, in the back loop only, I'm going to single crochet. And then I'm going to single crochet 6 more times, so that'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 total. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to turn my work, and then I'm going to single crochet 7, back loop only. So I'm going to come here to the next single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7. Then I'm going to come here and I'm going to single crochet in the next stitch here on the ankle, and I'm going to single crochet again in the stitch after that. So now your piece should look something similar to this. I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to begin doing my next single crochet back loop only, not in this stitch, but in this stitch. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Chain 1, turn my work, and then again, I'm going to, in my next single crochet, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to single crochet 7 single crochets, beginning at that first single crochet. 5, 6, and 7. Then I'm going to single crochet again in the next single crochet on the ankle, and then single crochet in the next stitch on the ankle, and I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to continue just like that until I get all the way around. And then when we get right back here, I'm going to show you how to seam the 2 sides together. Okay, so now that we've done our cuff all the way around, it's going to be time to sew the seam shut so that it's practically invisible. So what I'm going to do is I've come up here and I've done my, my single crochet 7 times in the back loop, and then I've made my chain. And then from there, I'm going to just go ahead and pull my yarn through. Now, if you've noticed, this yarn right here has 2 strands. I actually ran out of the last little bit of this muslin yarn, this muslin colored or vanilla colored yarn, if you will. And, I really didn't have too much farther to go with this. And so I had this more lace weight yarn, same color, same blend of material available. So I just doubled that up and used it just to finish off my sock. It's a very good match. I wish it were a size 1. That would have made it a little easier because it's just a touch thicker than the size 1, but this lace weight. This 0 weight yarn is worked out just fine. I didn't have to go buy a whole nother skein for probably 20 feet of yarn. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and use our yarn needle and thread that yarn. And so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to take the yarn and I'm going to catch right here this free loop of the chain that we originally did. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just put my yarn through there. And I'm just going to whip stitch. So I've got it through there, and now I'm just going to pick up the back loop of the last row of single crochets that I did, and then just whip stitch it into that free loop from the very first chain that we did. And I will continue to do that all the way down. And then when I've finished that, then I'll just go ahead and weave those loose ends in. And then as you can see on the back, once that's completed, it's hard to tell that there is even a seam. Everything just more or less looks like it's just part of the ribbing. And then the next thing I'm going to do is put my novelty button, and I'm going to sew that on right about there to add a little bit of personality to my sock. So now that your socks are finished, how fun are these? These are perfect to make in a fall evening or to help keep the fall chill off. At any rate, it was wonderful having you here with me today, but now's the time for me to say goodbye. So until I see all you wonderful and creative fiber artists again, stay crafty, stay amazing, and above all, keep weaving your weird. Bye-bye now until we see each other again.